So welcome back to the channel. Today I want to speak about something which I feel is very important, which I think is specifically really fundamentally helping us, our individual self, which can help us to move forward. And that is speaking to our inner child and how to work with our inner child in order for us to break free from these kind of constraints and bondage that we're in at the moment as adults. So I'll see you after the intro and let's get into this. So welcome back. My name's Jay. I'm from Kana Holistics, where we learn together and we grow together in the sight of God. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to speak about that inner child and how to work with that inner child that we all have. So before I get into this, let me just do a bit of housekeeping. Could you like, share and subscribe? And remember, don't forget to press that notification bell that tells you when I do new videos, which is becoming to be a bit more frequent. So without further ado, let's jump into this and let's begin our today's session. So working with the inner child, how do I explain that to you? Now, that inner child is you when you were younger. It could go back to a date, an age. For example, you could be 8, you could be 7, you could be 10, it could be 11. But that inner child is when you, by whoever, society, parents, siblings, whoever, kind of imprinted on you who you are to become as an adult. So let me explain that again. So that inner child is it was a time in your life when you were younger where society or family or whoever kind of left the imprint of who and what you was to become when you became older. I think, and I hear you probably going like, well, how could they know that they're going to do that? For example, when they talk about there's no such thing. So they may say, for example, oh, you need to grow up or stop being an idiot or things of that nature, which kind of will frustrate you. For me, my time was when I hit about 7 or 8 and I had a lot of pressure from family members to grow up, to not live my best life as a child. But my mum always tried to keep me and my brother young children by allowing us to experience the things as young kids, you know. And I don't want to start talking about, you know, like Santa Claus and things like that, because just in case children are with you now, and I don't want them to be kind of like corrupted by this or be put in any way. So I'm not going to say about belief systems and stuff like that. So I want to say about, you know, we're told about certain things don't exist and so on. So anyway, I hope you know what I'm talking about, because I don't want them to hear that. Because for me, I kept my children with that kind of notion for years. I think it's important personally. It gives you, it helps you to identify, for me, in my mind. And remember, I'm only talking from my own experience and experiences that I've spoken to people around, or I've known and dealt with and so on. It helps them, or me, or people to deal with the harshes of reality. You know, when you believe in Santa Claus, for example, there's this magic that's there, that you get excited that the world is right and we can all have a common goal, and there's this big guy who's going to come around to your home and bring you presents because you've been good. I mean, in reality, that sounds really, really warm feeling. You know, for children these days, forced to grow up for whatever reason, and I know some children who are carers, you know, at a young age, or who are homeless at a young age, who are in orphans at a young age, you know. And a good friend of mine was an orphan, and he said that was been some of the best times of his life, being an orphan, because he had really good upbringing as an orphan, because his parents were pretty bad. But anyway, long story short, moving on from there, dealing with your inner child, I'm not talking about dealing with these people that kind of try to manipulate you and control you and tell you what they want you to believe. I'm talking about you as an individual and how you can communicate with your inner self, your inner child. So let me just explain that your inner child is, again, the version of you, is you where you've lived at that time. And if you was to think back to an age when you were younger, when, I don't know, let's explain where you had to grow up. Yeah, you had to kind of like, I hate using the word man up, but you had to grow up. What age was that at? What age can you remember where you were told about stuff? And let me just use me. I think I was about 8. And from there, I had a realization that I was doing a lot for my family. I was going to the shops for them. I know it sounds really trivial, but I was going for the shop for them. I was kind of like the house slave in some ways, because if anyone needed anything, I'll send Jason, you know. And looking back at it, it molded me into something that I am today that is good, because I am a caring person. This is why I'm talking to you now. And honestly, I believe that peace I brought to that person, whoever it was, whether it was my mum, my dad, or my siblings, I liked the idea that they were happy because I went and served, you know. But in reality, it wasn't really fair. You know, it wasn't really fair because no one should be like running around for anybody, you know, if you want to go and get it yourself. So going back going back to that age where you are impressionable and you are told certain things about life. And as you're growing up for me, for example, the age of 8 upwards, say to 12, you're told, you know, that I was always constantly told by my dad I was an idiot. I was stupid, yeah, just those two things really. And that kind of stuck with me for years. So every time I began to be really successful at something, when I did my music and I had my own band and I was a performer and I was a choreographer and I was a rapper, and when I got really, really successful, I would go, hold on, I'm an idiot. I would never get above this. I'm only good to get to the first or second step. I would never make it all the way because I'm stupid, or I'm an idiot. The other thing, when I started one of my first businesses, I was only 14, and I was going to Holborn to a company called TSI Video. And I would go there and I would create my cartoons at home. And I had a really, really amazing mentor called Tony Venning, who ended up buying me all these cells, which is plastic sheets of paper, which you would to draw on to create the cartoons. And I remember these 3-4 couriers arriving at the house and my dad answering the door. It was one of the only days my dad was actually off, to be fair, because my dad was always working. And they goes, we have a delivery for Mr. J, for me. And my dad goes, well, that's me. And he goes, no, for Master, like the understudy, because me and my dad had the same initials. So he was Joseph. And I remember them coming in, and the whole of the front room, no, the whole of the hallway was filled with boxes and boxes and boxes of these cells, which I was used to create my cartoon, and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of paint, in order, and also paint brushes, obviously, to be able to paint to create this cartoon. My dad goes, well, what did I do? Like, I was automatically straight away was blamed, like I did something wrong, and it was like, oh, this has to go back. And then I remember Tony phoning and saying, and speaking to my dad and said, no, it was a gift from them, da da da. So I remember moving it into my bedroom and it was like a warehouse. It was just like everywhere. But I loved it. And I had this system. Where I'll paint, I would put it up, and I would keep moving across. I would keep moving it, so as it dries, I'll store it, so it was all in order. But as a 14-year-old, I wasn't taught that. You know, it's something I worked out. It's something you work out when you're that age. So when I got to that point, I was sitting in meetings with representatives from Walt Disney and from Warner Brothers and other bits and other companies around the world in this kind of like meeting for impending videos that they were going to create. And when my name come up, you know, it was like video cartoons, and I was on these little booster chairs because I was so small, and and I remember once some person go, well, why are you helping him for? And he goes, well, if someone has to help him, and it will help him set his precedents for him to move forward. Something like that. Tony said to this guy, and put me in his place. I didn't realise how important Tony was at that time. And if you're out there, Tony, and you see this, thank you so much, because you have created something so special in me, and this is a big part of it. Why I'm doing these videos. And the other thing was, again, going back to talking to the inner child, when you're dealing with a individual or you're dealing with yourself as a child, so there's you as the adult, and you feel disconnected, angry and lost and confused. And then I would advise giving yourself permission to talk to your 8-year-old child, your 7-year-old you, your 4-year-old you, your 7-year-old you, whatever the age was where that turn happened in your life. When you visualize that child there, what would you say to that child about your life now in order to empower that child to be who they are today? The important thing is as well, what you must remember when you do that, is note how you're feeling, what's going on for you inside. For me, when I did it, for example, I did a process where I was saying, if my grandson Jace came to me and he was told that he was an idiot, he was useless, he was this, that and the other by other members of the family, what would I tell him? Straight away I got defensive, and I said to him, don't you ever believe what people say to you. You are a great gift. You are amazing. You are created in the sight of God. You are my grandson. You have an ability that don't ever listen to what people say to you. If you want to do it, you strive to achieve anything. No one, that's their own insecurities they're trying to imprint on you. And I would personally have words with that person who is trying to derail my grandson's direction. The same is what I used to say to my children, Jordan and Josh. I used to turn around and say, you are created in God's image, you are created in my image, you're the offspring of me and your mother. We are both very successful. We strive, we achieve what we go to do. But you are in your own right. You are your own person. Don't let no one derail you. Do not let anyone derail you. And both my children are very successful, and they're successful in life, in work, and they're successful in love and also in family. So the important thing is, I believe, like with the lotus flower, even though it's soaked in mud or grows in mud, and whatever they brought up, it's important that whatever is fed to that child is important for how they achieve and where they become when they're older. And I would always continue to feed my children and my grandson those fruits of blessings and worthiness and gratitude, because if I can't financially help them, I would emotionally make them strong. Because if you think about it, if it's your child, for example, and I'm slightly derailing from what I'm talking about with you and your past self, but the reason why I'm saying about you talking to your past self is that if you've got grandchildren or you've got children, and if you believe the lie which your parents, for example, I'm just using them as an example, if you believed and fed them the same crap you were fed and that you now overcame, and you fed them, they will be where you are. And remember, they're your offspring. They are going to feed and grow into your line, your bloodline. So with that, we all know that we want our bloodline to be fruitful and successful. So it's important that we feed them and show them what's right. You know, that's in some ways important to show that we can be vulnerable and we do get things wrong, and it's okay to say that to them. And within that, they can only grow from that. So the reason that's why I'm doing this is about your bloodline and your generation to come after you. So looking at your past self, let's say your 10-year-old you, and what would you say to that child? They're sitting in the room with you, sitting on the chair next to you. What would you say? Okay, this child comes up to you, which is you, and you're you in the future, and the child goes, you say to the child, what's wrong? The child says to you, I've just been told that I'm an idiot and I'm useless. And what would you say to that person? What would you say to that child? And what I would have said, and what I did say to me back then, was that you were not useless, you were not unworthy, you were not stupid. You think differently, and thinking differently isn't stupid. In fact, you think more advanced than most people, and a lot of people fear that. So don't ever feel that you are useless or rubbish or no good. You were created perfectly by God. Remember that. But instinctively, when I was doing that, I had this fear. Like I was my dad, and I was talking to me, and I was unreluctant. I was in that moment before I got to this stage about what I would have said, what I just said to you, what I said to me back then. I was saying to myself, "Oh, man up, grow up. You know, you are better than that. Just get on with it." Now, that's not going to be very good for a 10-year-old child or an 8-year-old child or a 5-year-old child to hear their peer, who they look to guide them, lead them in a way, show the path, for them to say, man up and grow up, and not address the situation that they're having this conflict in life. You know, so it's important that you address the conflict, and that conflict could be that you need to look at your own shadow self. And that child is a essence of that shadow self. And when you do talk to that child and you do the work with that child, there's a freedom in it. When you had that conversation with that child and you said to yourself back then, you say, you know, you're empowered, you're loving, and really, really mean it, really, really see it, and give examples about what your life has done now to date, and say, you're going to go on and achieve a successful business, a successful family, a successful charity, caring, support. You know, you're going to be an inspiration to others. All these things, that 10-year-old child is going to experience. And that child needs to know this. And they're going to be empowered by that. Yes, it's you from the past. But every time you're feeling disconnected from yourself, and you're feeling like you don't know where you're going, and you feel like it is from the past, give yourself a hug. Just literally hug yourself like this. Just give yourself a hug and say everything's going to be okay, and say what you needed to say, as what I just said, and then just give yourself a hug and give yourself permission to say, is it okay if I hug you? And then the child will say yes, and then you give yourself a hug, and then give yourself permission, say, I'm feeling so much better, and note how you're feeling when you're giving yourself that hug. And yeah, you may feel like it's a bit weird, but it's not really. Trust me. Do it a couple of times and get used to it. Do a part of your meditation, your well-being, your growth. your empowerment. It's really good for law of attraction and manifestation, because a lot of the blocks, remember I was speaking about the paradigm in the subconscious is stuck in the past. It's stuck with what you've been taught and shown, and goes by the whole hero's journey. So we need to turn around and overcome those paradigms and get rid of the subconscious and make it a better subconscious, to make it a good conscious, and for us as adults. So I'm going to end there. I just wanted to just put this down because I'm off to an event now. And I just want to say to you, you know what? You are beautiful. You are blessed. You are, if you don't feel you're loved by anyone, he loves you, and don't give up, and be that shining example to others, as I know you can be, and own it. Own who you are. Look at yourself and say, I am amazing. I am magnificent. And love and light, and God bless. And I'll see you in the next video. And namaste.